chopped Western Suburbs and Newtown from the competition. Now, to traditionalists, that's too big a word for me, it was a body blow. The two sides were among the first 5 clubs formed in 1908. To practical businessmen, it was the only answer to a continued financial slide.
Wests were Rugby League's original millionaires. They last won a premiership back in 1954 and were second only to St George in the early 60s. One of their toughest veterans, Noel Kelly, was incredulous about the news and slammed West's Leagues Club for the demise of the Magpies.
Too many people wanted to turn the Rugby League football club into just a Leagues Club, which they finally did do. And to my way of thinking, they probably all clapped their bloody hands now, and they should be very proud of themselves that they have, after a long time, got rid of Western Suburbs.
I'm very disappointed also that the Rugby League itself, the only way it can come to grips with this inflationary trend is to put teams out of the competition. Now, who are going to be the teams in years to come that are going to be put out because of the inflationary trend?
According to President John Brooks, it's the end of an era.
Well, I can't really see how we could survive to... They say we're not invited to play in 1984, but we can come back in 1985 or later. But I'd say unless you had some guy like Alan Bond who put $1 million in it, I can't see really how we could ever come back.
This is a moment of revenge for the plundering of their players in the late 70s, one of West's few wins over Manly. Even the players couldn't conceal their disgust at last night's decision.
I was more angry than what I was shocked, but really, I suppose there's nothing much we can do about it.
I don't think at any stage the Rugby League have made any effort to try and fix the situation. I think they have more or less let it go ahead without attempting to bring some sort of other arrangement about. And I think it'll rebound on them in the long run, because I think they're hitting a lot of Rugby League fans.
The sacking of West means there will be 60 graded players out of work next year, a fact that seems to be of little concern to the New South Wales Rugby League.
It's difficult. 2 of the founding clubs of the Sydney League Premiership have been dropped from next year's competition. The New South Wales Rugby League took the momentous decision last night and cast an ominous shadow over the future of both Wests and Newtown. The Jets should be back in 1985 if they merge successfully with Campbelltown, but there's little hope of the Magpies ever taking flight again.
Few of these players would have believed when they met in March that both clubs would be folding at the end of this year. Other teams are quickly snapping up the better men, such as Terry Lamb and John Ferguson, but it's a sad day for most of them. However, a huge injection of funds from Phillip Street should at least see Newtown with a new home and name in '85.
The league was putting the $300,000 that we got from Footytown last week into provision of ground facilities at Campbelltown, and also we're putting in $100,000 from the league's ground improvement fund, so obviously that's going to operate. Well, we're hoping it is. It's our aim to get the club off the ground at there. The West situation will depend on what financial support it can engender over the next 12 months.
So, some light at the end of the tunnel for Newtown, but almost none for Wests.
The only reason that Wests are out is because they haven't got enough support from their fans, from the public.
Tough decision, you think, then?
Oh, it stinks.
I think everybody in the western suburbs is disappointed, let's put it that way.
One of the big problems over the years for Wests has been that their club here at Ashfield is so far from their Lidcombe ground. It's one of the best kept ovals in the competition, and one that Parramatta are tipped to take over next year. But it was a sad sight today. If the Eels move in, they'll no doubt fill these stands every week, but the Magpies will be sorely missed. They joined the league at its 1908 inception and won 4 premierships. Their departure from Lidcombe closes the gate on a rich and proud tradition.
It's ironic. The club that finished paupers, surviving on pennies, were once one of league's richest. The urban sprawl robbed it of a future. Ken Sutcliffe, National 9 News.
The fight may be short-lived. Equity Court Judge Mr Justice Helsham today ruled the New South Wales League doesn't have the power to stop West from taking part in the competition. But the league has countered by saying it will change its constitution. Wests and Newtown were suspended from the competition last September. But the Equity Court ruled today Wests should be readmitted. Newtown will stay on the sidelines, preferring to wait until 1985 when their financial problems are overcome. But Wests want to play next year. The news of the successful appeal broke during the league forum, and at the time, West's officials felt confident the issue was over.
But I don't think there's any animosity between us and the Rugby League. I think they'd be probably quite happy the fact we won our case, so let us stay there.
But later in the day, after an emergency meeting, League President Tom Bellew made it clear the dust hadn't settled. At a special meeting on December the 1st, he and his executive would recommend the Constitution be changed to give it the power of deciding which clubs take part in the competition.
The League, from things that have taken place at the forum here over the last couple of days, have obviously got to have the power to determine which clubs remain viable or remain within the premiership competition.
There seems little doubt that the amendment will be adopted and West will be out in the cold again. Although...
Very reserve grade grand final winner Ken Gentle as coach. That's the latest news from the resurrected Magpies. Graham McNeice has a look at League's fairy tale story.
For Western Suburbs, 1983 can only be described as the greatest comeback since Lazarus. Despite remarkable success in preceding seasons, the continued loss of key players, their sponsor, bad weather and poor attendances combined to see West's finish as wooden spooners and plunge the club into financial crisis. And then the news that rocked the Magpies, suspension from the competition, most taking it as the final nail in the coffin. But not so a small band of committeemen and die-hard supporters. They felt they'd been knocked down in the first round, but weren't prepared to concede the fight. In a daring move, West challenged the validity of the League's constitutional right to suspend the club and set out to prove it in court. While this was going on, a last-ditch effort to raise money to show they were financially viable for 1984. The search for a sponsor continued, and hopes soared when a big Gold Coast developer showed keen interest in saving the Magpies. Although those hopes were dashed, the spirit wasn't. Fundraising projects were set up in various business houses. And then came the bonanza, a rock concert at Lidcombe Oval, which netted the club $90,000. The financial situation was suddenly much healthier, and there was no stopping the momentum among supporters. President John Brooks.
But the little things, like a guy pulled up at the West League Club, I believe, on Monday or Sunday, pair of thongs, shorts, whipped in, gave a cheque for $500, jumped back to the car. No address, but just $500.
Then the news which really delighted Magpie supporters, and indeed a great section of the general public. Victory in the equity court case against the New South Wales League. But it still wasn't quite over. The General Committee held a special meeting last night to change the Constitution and then vote on whether to oust the Magpies again. Undoubtedly, huge public sympathy swayed the outcome. No vote was taken against the Magpies. The final round of the battle had been won. It all seems incredible, but Wests will be back here at Lidcombe Oval in 1984. And all this has rekindled an old phrase. You just can't stop the Magpies.
You can't stop the Magpies. Nobody can stop the Magpies. On the cricket ground, with our fans around, we'll be waiting there for you. Hey, hey!
Deserting what appeared to be a sinking ship. Unless some return, it's going to be a desperate battle for them next year to stay off the bottom of the table.
The battle to be readmitted to the Sydney Rugby League competition has opened up more problems for the battling club. It's expected the Magpies will have a fight on their hands to retain some of the 5 players who have now signed with other clubs.
West's first training session since last night's good news, as expected, was a fairly bright affair. One of the 5 players in dispute, Bruce Clark, turned up. The prop forward, who signed with Cronulla when West were thrown out of the competition, has indicated he's keen to rejoin the Magpies. But the other 4, well, that's another matter. And West Secretary Ray Bernasconi, while all smiles at league headquarters, indicated there was a stumbling block with Scott Gale, Brian Batiste, David Green and Paul Bevan.
Well, it would appear that, some of the clubs are going to back on that, so it would appear that we may have a little bit of litigation on it.
Yeah, so still a little bit of legal matters to go on.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Tonight's session at Lidcombe had plenty of old faces and some new ones, like former Canterbury prop Brian Coveney, who's looking for a club. West will also name a new coach within the next few days, one of the favourites being Greg Cox, who's chasing a captain's coach position.
That's sport tonight. Thanks, Brian.